All right, Rabbi, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for Tachin Pei Hey, V'Tilsa Mishpacha, for dedicating all the Shurim and Drashos this year as a zechus for Besaros Tovos for Klal Yisrael. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Teves, the Kalman Mishpacha, dedicating the Shurim this month in memory of Amit ben David Levi, the brother of Itai Levi, who was killed al Kiddush Hashem in Gaza on the first night of Hanukkah. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah is Neshama will have an Aliyah and his family a Nechama. Our week of learning sponsors, Zevi and Joshi Daniel, Leili Nishmas, Zevi's father, Yitzchak Yisrael ben Rafal Noach Yosef. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, Neshama will have an Aliyah, his family a Nechama. All those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Choli Yisrael. The Rebbe Shalom should bring our hostages home b'shalom and b'karav, and should allow our holy soldiers to be successful. B'chol Maaseh Yedehem. So with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Chav Zayin 27. We are picking up Emir Hashem on Chav Vav Amud Beis 26b, and we left off. All right, we have a lot to do today. So we left off. Davar Acher. Davar Acher. Actually, let's just pick up Amar of Hanan, which is about 2, 4, 6, about 8 lines up from before it gets wide. We actually did this part, but just to reorient the sugya a little bit. Amar of Hanan, Lama Nikra Shema Toshia. Why is Torah called Toshia? Because Torah saps you of your energy. Again, that part we spoke about yesterday. I'm not going to go through that again today. So the Gemara says, good. Davar Acher, another possibility is Toshia. What does it mean, Toshia? Shenitna bechashai mipnei hasatan. Torah was given quietly because of the Satan. Now, it's interesting. What exactly does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, it's almost right across from Rashi. Mipnei Satan, shumakatrik v'amar tistapik le'elyon v'lo yimasru aluchos biad Moshe. So apparently the Satan was against the giving of the Torah to man. He felt that it should remain in the celestial sphere, and therefore, again, it should not be given to man. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to give the Torah kind of quietly, so that the Satan didn't know about it. So I said, this is actually quite interesting, right? Because the Torah wasn't exactly given quietly. So what does this mean, bechashoy? So this could mean a couple of different things. So possibility one could be that this is actually a reference to the second luchos. Remember again, the first luchos had a lot of fanfare, and that's why part of that is why the Gemara attributes the fact that those luchos didn't last. It was too much. It was bepumbi. It was too much fanfare, too much going on, too much publicity, and that's why again the story doesn't really end well with the first set of luchos. The second luchos were given in a much quieter fashion, in a much more tsanua fashion, and that's why ultimately again they endured. So it's possible that it's a reference ultimately again to the second set of luchos. That's possibility one. Possibility two is what the Gemara is talking about over here is not even as much about the giving of the Torah, as much as it is about the way in which we acquire Torah. That it is important for Torah to be acquired b'chashai, quietly. What does that mean? It's easy when a person learns to become a Baal Gaiva. A person says, I have amassed knowledge, look at what I'm doing, look at what I'm accomplishing. And of course there's this fine line between, on one hand, being very proud of your accomplishments and celebrating those accomplishments, but at the same time maintaining a proper sense of humility. Torah only works if it's accompanied by humility. If Torah is not accompanied by humility, that's where the Satan gets involved. Another possibility is Toshia. What does it mean, Toshia? Devarim shal tohu sha'olam meshusas aleim. This is so beautiful. The formulation here is fascinating. Torah is words of tohu. Now, at first glance, that does not sound good, right? Because remember, again, our association with tohu is gracious, right? Tov avol means astonishingly empty. What does it mean, Torah's words of tohu? Look at Rashi. Devarim shal tohu. So dibor ukriya ba'alma v'chol dibor ein bo geshisha mamish kito azeh. So Torah is interesting. Torah is comprised of words. Now, I will say words often don't have a mamoshos. They don't have a substance to them. And yet, kito azeh, dafal pikein, Olam meshusas aleim. We'll say, how beautiful is this? Torah's words. Words don't have mamashos. Don't really have a substance. Thank you. Don't really have a substance to it. And yet again, it's those very words upon which the world is created. So it's the great anomaly and great beauty and great holiness of Torah. That on one hand, it doesn't have substance like everything else that is material in this world, yet the world can't endure without it. So beautiful. Amar Ula, Machshav Mo'alas Afila Divrei Torah. Both says a very profound Gemara. So Ula says, once again, these formulations are interesting. Machshava mo'alas fila divrei Torah. What does it mean? Rashi says, Machshava daigas halev al mizonoso shel adam. So as Karo will say, if a person is preoccupied with his parnasa, and a person is worried about his parnasa, so worry about parnasa could undermine one's spiritual development. Shene emar, made for machshavas arumim, v'lo ta'asena yedeim toshia. Shabbos says it's a very profound Gemara, and I think Ula's not even. This isn't like a statement of indictment, right? This isn't like a statement of negativity. This is a statement of fact. This is the way that it works. I'll say every person knows this. When I'm worried about my parnasa, when I'm worried about being able to pay my bills, and I'm worried just about my material life. I don't mean material in the excess fashion. Just the ability to maintain my parnasa that absolutely upends and undermines the ability to truly focus on spirituality. The Gemara says, however, Amarava im asukin l'shma eina mo'eles. But if a person learns Torah l'shma, then even if at the end of the day he has worries about his parnasa, he will still be able to focus on his spiritual growth. So what does this mean? So if you think about it, sometimes not being able to engage in spiritual development because of worries about parnasa in and of itself is inherently contradictory. My parnasa comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In times when I'm struggling with my parnasa, those are dafka the times that I need the Ribono Shel Olam most. So Ula is pointing out that the nature of man is that worry about parnasa often creates an obstacle to spiritual growth or to growth in Torah. But yet, again, Rabba says, but if you recognize that parnasa comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so dafka in those times when I struggle is the times that I need to be closest, then ultimately, again, then even struggles with parnasa will not undermine my spiritual development, which essentially, as Rabbi said, that you could use life challenge. In this case, it's parnasa challenge, but it's not just about parnasa. You could use challenges in life in one of two ways. Either they could create a wedge between myself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or to bring me closer. Now, when we say create a wedge, I don't mean the fact about questioning how did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do this to me. I mean on a basic level, when a person encounters challenge, a person could allow all of their energy to be devoted to keeping themselves keeping themselves afloat, and not having anything left in the tank for spiritual development. Or a person could say, no, dafka during this time of challenge, that's when I need the Ribono Shel Olam more than anything. And therefore use this challenge as a springboard for closeness. It's all a question of perspective, all a question of how a person wants to utilize the opportunity of life challenges. Shneimar Rabos Machshavos Levish V'atzas Hashem Hitakum Eitza Sheyesh B'Dvar Hashem Hitakum Li'olam. So Eitza, the Gemara's understanding of Eitza, which means spiritual development. Sheyesh B'Dvar Hashem, which is Lishma, which is ultimately, again, for the purpose of coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hi Takum Li'olam. This will endure forever. So I'll say, on one hand, Ula, describing the human condition, struggles with parnasa, and for that matter, struggles in life, tend to distract a person from spiritual development, understandably so. Rabbah coming along and saying, just understand, challenge also presents an incredible opportunity for spiritual development, because challenge reminds me I have no one and nothing else to rely on in this world but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So dafka challenge is the time to solidify, concretize, bolster, and build that relationship with Hashem. All a question of how I choose to utilize the opportunity of life challenge. Incredible. I'm going to Emosai. So remember again, Rabbi Yehuda said, back to the Mishnah for just a little bit. Rabbi Yehuda said in the Mishnah that Allah, so all of these people who are apostle eidos, like for example the Mesachik Bekuvya, the Mafricha Yonim, the gambler, so Rabbi Yehuda says that's only if they have no other profession. Right, but if they have another profession, then these individuals won't be apostle eidos. Right, his lashon was Rabbi Yehuda Emasai Bizman Shein Lam Umnus Elahu. When this is their only profession, Aval yesh lahem umnos shalo. I'm sorry. Aval yesh lahem umnos shalohu. But if they have another profession that's not gambling, pigeon racing, or all of these other detrimental things, then Allah Lamaisa they are kosher le'edus. Says the Gemara. Amra the second wide line. Amra Rabbi Yavo. Amra Rabbi Lazar. Locha Rabbi Yehuda. Dalach Vaz Rabbi Yehuda. But Amra Rabbi Yavo. Amra Rabbi Lazar. Kulan tzrichin hachroza bebezdin. Shabbos said it's very interesting. So comes along. Rabbi Abba said Rabbi Lazar that all of these individuals, before you officially passel them for eidos, you have to make an announcement in Bezdin. Right now, again, what's the point? What's the point of that? What's the point of that? Hachraza. Rashi says over here, Hachraza Bezdin ve'enon nefsal eidos ad sheyachrizu bebezdin lohodia psulon. So what's the idea of the announcement? So in other words, before you passel someone from being an aide, because he's a pigeon racer or a shvius or a shmita merchant or something else, you have to announce. Why do you have to announce it? Why? This is like the warning. This is the warning. It's almost telling the individual, we are going to disqualify you very shortly. Here's your last chance to get it together. So the Gemara says, Roa pligi barav acha v'ravino. What about a shepherd? Now we'll say, remember again, shepherds, what's interesting, shepherds have a terrible reputation, right? Why? What are they known for? Right? Theft. I just want to point out, it's always so intriguing to me how all of our greatest leaders throughout the generations were all shepherds, right? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, David HaMelech, right? After David, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? All this is parsha, right? Moshe Rabbeinu is Roas, Son, Yisrael, right? Chosno, he's Moshe Rabbeinu shepherding. Moshe Rabbeinu's first encounter with the snaz because he was out shepherding. It's just interesting, by the way, how sometimes it's not the profession, but it's the man. Everything is about, so the majority of shepherds seem to be unscrupulous, except the ones who aren't. So interestingly enough, so what about a shepherd? Does a shepherd, because shepherds were known to be such thieves, do they need this announcement in Beis Din as well? So, pligi barav achav ravina, chad amar bayachraza, v'chad amar lo bayachraza. So, machlokes, one opinion said, yes, even shepherds need an announcement. Others said, shepherds don't need an announcement. L'man amar lo bayachraza, hainu dam Rav Yehuda amarav, stam ro'eh pasel. So, according to the opinion that says you don't need to announce about a shepherd, that's because everyone knows stam shepherd is pasel. It's possible, but according to the opinion that says that even a shepherd needs an announcement, what do you do about the statement in the Brisa that in general you have to make an announcement about shepherds? So the Gemara says, what do you do about the statement that says stam ro'eh pasel? The bistama machrizin ale. It means that mistama, you're going to have to go ahead and announce about the shepherd. Okay, so we'll say, so therefore, interestingly enough, we seem to be adopting this approach that before you disqualify any of these individuals, you have to announce in Beis Din. Right, Ruvain ben Yaakov is a pigeon racer, and just want to let you know he's going to be Apostle Eidos. This way, again, that announcement allows Ruvain ben Yaakov to get his act together, should he choose to do so. Does a shepherd need an announcement, or is he just stam disqualified? Machlokes. Listen to this case. Hahu matana dahav chasimi ale trei gazlanin. There was a shtar matana, right? So Ruvain gave Shimon a matana, a gift, and they had two witnesses, and the witnesses who signed on it were both gazlanim, were both thieves, and therefore apostle eidos. So Rabbi Shmuel wanted to wanted to certify the document as kosher. Why? Because there was never an announcement made about these guys. Never an announcement made about these two witnesses. Therefore, because there was never an announcement made, they're not disqualified. Rav says, 1 second. So this is actually a very interesting qualification. So Rava said back, 1 second. The idea of having to make an announcement, that's called with a rabbinic thief. We'll say, what's a rabbinic thief? That's not a thief with smicha, right? A rabbinic thief, right, means that's someone who committed an act of gezel midrabanan. The examples of that are Mishnah, Mesachik, Bekuvya, Mafriach, Miryonim, right? Again, the gambler, the pigeon racer. The problem with all these individuals is that it's rabbinic thieves. So those are the individuals who require an announcement. A biblical thief. What's a biblical thief? Someone who goes over to someone and steals their wallet, right? Steals their car. That's a good old biblical theft, right? That does not require any kind of announcement about it. Such a person like that is automatically disqualified from Eidos. Okay, let's go back to Rav Nachman. Ochle davar acher psul le'edus. So we'll say this is fascinating. So Rav Nachman says as follows. Ochle davar acher. Now, what does that mean? Ochle davar acher. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says Ochle davar acher mekabli tzedakah min hanochrim davichil Hashem machmas mamon v'haveli kirasha dechamas. So we'll say someone who accepts charity from non-Jews. If you accept charity from non-Jews, such a person is pasal le'edus. Now again, the concern over here is that such a person has created a chil Hashem. Why has he created a chil Hashem? Why do you have to go outside of the community for tzedakah? Why do you have to go outside of the community for help? Right? There's plenty of help available within the Jewish community. There's no need to take tzedakah from outside of the community. And doing so represents a chil Hashem because it makes it look like Jews are not compassionate. So I will say, now we're going to see over here, the thing that makes people pasal le'edus is money. That's what makes people pasal le'edus. That when a person takes money or uses money or in an unscrupulous way, that's when they become pasal le'edus. So therefore, this act of taking charity from a non-Jewish source shows that a person wants money so badly that they're even willing to take it, again, from outside of the community. Such a person is pasal le'edus. But that's only if they did this publicly. Aval b'tzina lo. But if they did this privately, then it's not a chil Hashem, and therefore, again, they're not pasal le'edus. Furthermore, even if they took it publicly, that's only if they had the ability to receive this money privately and not debase themselves. But if a person had absolutely no choice, in other words, their only option was to receive money from a non-Jewish source and to do it publicly, this was their only way to survive, then halacha l'maisa, those are extenuating circumstances, they're not pasal le'edus. Incredible. Amram Nachman, hachashud ala arayos, kasha le'edus. So I said, this is very interesting. So Rav Nachman says, someone who is chashud ala arayos, which means someone who is suspect regarding immoral behavior, is still kasha le'edus, which is fascinating. Look at Rashi, why kasha le'edus? Deba'inan rasha dechamas, dechsev atashes yadcha eid chamas. So we'll say it's interesting. So what we just said before. What disqualifies a person for eidos is not simply sinful behavior. What I will say, if what disqualified a person was the commission of an avera, then what? You would have zero pool of eidos, right? Zero pool of eidim. Everyone does it. Everyone does averas. Who will say, so what disqualifies an aid are financial indiscretions. That's what we're concerned about over here, because once a person is we'll call it either will lie, will cheat, is not honest when it comes to monetary matters, then we're concerned that in transactional law, they're not going to remain honest either. But interestingly enough, indiscretions in other areas of Yiddishkeit, the person is chashud al harayos. Okay, obviously it's not good. It's not good for any of us to commit averos. But that does not take away from my ability to be a witness in a financial transaction. Kasha le'edos. Amar v'sheishes. So the Gemara says, Amar v'sheishes, ani mari arban bekasvei v'kasher. So this is interesting. Is it possible that a person will go ahead and get 40 lashes on the shoulder and still be kasher le'edus? Now, if you look at Rashi, Arban bekasvei chayiv malkus hi, afapi shein shemasra da'amar mar, malkin alo tova shmua. So, both say, interestingly enough, what Rav Sheshes was saying was like this. A person who is known to the community to be chashud al harayos, to be suspect regarding immoral activity, we would flog such a person like that. So the Gemara says, somebody's going to get malchus, we're going to flog him, and he's going to be kasher le'edus. Seems a little bit strange. And Rava says, ultimately, again, Rav Nachman would agree. So again, Rav Nachman still holds that someone who is chashud regarding immorality is still going to be kasher le'edus. It's going to be kasher le'edus. Why? Because the only thing that disqualifies you regarding edus is financial indiscretion, but not moral indiscretion. But even Rav Nachman will agree that when it comes to testifying about a woman that her husband is dead, we're not going to rely on that guy, right? In other words, because remember again, an Eid Echad is believed to say, let's say Rachel's married to Ruvain, so an Eid Echad is believed to say that Ruvain's dead. Ruvain's dead, right? That's a special kula that Chazal made by Eidos Isha. But someone who is suspect regarding immoral behavior, we're not going to believe him. Why? Makes sense. Because we're concerned that maybe he's lying because he set his eyes upon this woman. So Ravina And Ravina said, 1 second, it's only for him to give Eidos regarding permitting a woman, getting a woman out of marriage. But let's say again, this same guy testifies that Rachel's married to Ruvain, that she's a married woman. So that ultimately again will accept this testimony for? So the Gemara says, Pshita, that's obvious. What would you have thought? What would you have thought? So maybe I would have thought like this. I would have thought that perhaps halacha l'maisa, he prefers that she's married, right? This immoral guy prefers that this woman is married. Why? Tisiv ma'im ginuvim yimtaku. Stolen waters are always sweeter. So right, the Gemara says, Kamash malon de kama de kaimi hachi shchichale. No, that's not true because he's immoral. So because he's immoral, he would rather that she's not married because this way she's available to him. So therefore, if he testifies that she's married, we ultimately believe him. Okay, Rav Nachman. So the Gemara says, Ganav Nisan Ganav Tishrei Lo Shmei Ganav. This is great. Rav Nachman says, a Ganav Nisan and a Ganav Tishrei is not called a Ganav. Now, what this sounds like is someone who only steals during Nisan and Tishrei. You have this in Baltimore, holiday season, right? So a Ganav Nisan, Ganav Tishrei. So that's the idea is like a recreational thief. Not all the time, right? Just during Nisan and Tishrei, such a person ultimately, again, is not considered to be a Ganav. Now, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Nisan, Zman Kotzir, Tishrei, Zman Botzir, Va'asif. So remember again, Nisan is the harvest season. So Tishrei is the ingathering season. So what this means is as follows, I will say. So this is talking about, let's qualify. So the Gemara says, Hani mili ba'arise v'davar muat. So v'davar sh'nim malachto. So here are the qualifications. We're talking about a sharecropper, right? Something that is completed and only a little bit. Okay, so now I understand the picture. What are we talking about over here? Someone who is a sharecropper working for someone, and what do? They end up taking more than they're entitled to. So remember again, what does a sharecropper get? A sharecropper gets a portion of the crop. That's what he gets. That's what a sharecropping arrangement is. Now, the halacha is that a laborer, when he's working in the field, is entitled, let's say again, he's working with finished produce, he's entitled to eat while he works. We learned these halachas in Bava Metzia, right? What he's not entitled to do, ve'al kel yecha lo titain, he can't put it in his utensils, he can't bring it home. A sharecropper is not entitled to that. Right, because a sharecropper is a different financial arrangement. A sharecropper gets a segment, a percentage of the produce, and doesn't get to eat while he's working. So the idea over here is we're talking about over here a sharecropper who's eating while he's working. So the Gemara says he's a thief, but such a thief is not disqualified for eidos. Why? Almost like I both say, it's going to sound strange. It's like an understandable theft. Okay, he's more a heter. He figures out, listen, I'm working really hard. I'm entitled to this. I'm hungry. If a regular laborer gets these benefits, then certainly I should get these benefits. So because he has a whole chachma worked out, he's not really a bona fide thief. So because he's not a bona fide thief, therefore, halacha l'maisa, he's still permitted to give eidos. So the Gemara says, Ichrei drav zivid, chad ganav kacha desare, upasle. So we'll say, so again, Rav Zivid, Ikari Rav Zivid. So Rav Zivid had farmers, and what happened? Chad ganav kav desare, upasle, one stole a kav of barley, and Rav Zivid disqualified him. V'chad ganav kibur dahini, upasle, and one went ahead and stole, literally again, a cluster of dates. And Rashi says over here, Kibur dahini kimin eshkol yish tumarim harbe ba'anaf echad, a big cluster of dates, and he puzzled him, Hano kaburoi di kibur nafsha biyom tov shalatzeres. So both say, so another story. There was a chevra who buried the dead on the first day of Shavuos. Now both say, now this is actually very interesting. So if you take a look, Rashi says over here, Kibure Kovrei Mesim. So these guys went ahead and buried the dead, Jewish grave diggers, and they buried the dead on the first day of Shavuos. Now, you're not allowed to bury the dead on Yom Tov Rishon. There is a halacha that says, we saw this in Moed Katan, that you are allowed to bury the dead on Yom Tov Sheni. And they allowed that, Chazal allowed that, ultimately again, als kavod hameis. Now today, we don't do that. Today we don't do that because we have refrigeration. So therefore, again, there's no concern that the mace is going to decompose if we wait to bury it until after Yom Tov. It happens to be still in some of the Hasidic communities, they still bury on Yom Tov Sheni, even presently, that's still the minhag hamakom. But again, in our communities, you do not see this done. In any event, these guys were mechal Yom Tov. You're not allowed to bury in Yom Tov Rishon. But they were mechal Yom Tov, they buried on Yom Tov Rishon. Now listen to this. In where it says, Shamtinu Rav Papa, upasnu le'edos. So ultimately, again, Rav Papa excommunicated them and made them pasal eidos. Now, why did he make them pasal eidos? Because the assumption was, why were they doing this? To make money. to make money, right? They wanted to make money, so essentially they worked on Yom Tov. They buried the dead on Yom Tov. Happens to be that their work is a very nice chesed shel emes, chesed for the dead, but it's still chil Yom Tov. V'achsherin Rav Huna bar Rav Yehoshua. Rav Huna bar Rav Yehoshua said, no, they're still kosher le'edus. Still kosher le'edus. How can you make them kosher le'edus? They're Rishayim. Savar mitzvah ka'avdi. These guys thought that they're doing a mitzvah. Again, obviously they were bechalo Yom Tov, which you're not allowed to do. But they were more a heter. They made a heter for themselves because they thought that after all they're doing a mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Vaha kameshamtina, but they were excommunicated. So the Gemara says, Savar kapara ka'abdi le'rabanan. So ultimately, again, they figured like this. They figured, you're right, we went ahead and we did something wrong. And I was well say, they thought, this is interesting, at least Rav Papa felt, at least Rav Huna felt, that this was like a good example of like an Avera Lishma. They thought that they were doing something good. Right? Now, granted, it was an Avera, but they were burying a Yid, so they thought it was something good. What about the excommunication? They looked at the excommunication as a cleansing process. So they felt that they came out kind of like ahead of the game on all of this. So they were excommunicated, cleansed, and therefore they should be all right. Okay, fine. So the Gemara says, bottom line, by the way, of course, again, halacha l'maisa, it is wrong. You're not allowed to bury on the first day of Yom Tov. But interestingly enough, Rav Huna bar Rav Yehoshua felt that you see in these kind of cases when a person has an explanation for their behavior and the explanation kind of holds a little bit of water even though it's erroneous, they're not necessarily pasul le'edus. Incredible. Itmar, what's that top of Chav Zayin? Good. Top of Chav Zayin, 27a. Itmar, eid zomim. Okay, suppose an interesting case over here. Eid zomim. So what do you do ultimately? Again, remember, an eid zomim means a witness who has been proven to be false. So remember again, both say the process for Eidim Zomim. Reuven and Shimon show up, and Reuven and Shimon say, we saw that A killed B on Monday morning, and then the second set of witnesses show up and they say, Reuven and Shimon, you couldn't have seen that because you were with us on Monday morning. Okay, so now Reuven and Shimon are proven to be an Eid Zomim. So the Gemara says, so now the Shabbos says, so an Eid Zomim obviously is not permitted to give Eidos. Is not believed. He lost his cheskes kashrus. The shaila is, how or when do we apply that status? So Abaye says the mafreya hu nifsal. Abaye says he is retroactively disqualified. In other words, retroactively disqualified all the way to the date in which he went ahead and he gave testimony. So let me illustrate where this could happen. So let's say, for example, that Reuven and Shimon give their testimony on Monday, January 13th, right? Yud Beis B'Teves. Yud Gimel B'Teves, right? So they go ahead and they give their testimony on the 13th of Teves. So now what happens? Let's say they're not made Zomim, right? Until the 13th of Adar, right? A couple of months later, right? Let's say that happens until a couple months later. So now both say, the shaila is, once they're made Eidim Zomim, the shaila is, does their Zomim status start from now, from the moment they're made Eidim Zomim, or does it extend back retroactively? Now both say, this is a yisodistic shaila. Why? Because the question is, what happens if they engaged in other testimonial activity in between the time that they gave their testimony and they were made Eidim Zomim? They signed on shtaris. They were Eidim under a chuppah. Right? All these different kinds of things. So again, do we extend their Eid Zomim status retroactively, or no, only from the moment they were made Zomim and forward? So this is machlokes. So Abaye says l'mafreya nifsal. Rava says mikana la'abal nifsal. Abaye says we extend their status retroactively. Rava says no, only from this point going forward. Abaye amar l'mafreya nifsal. So Abaye says retroactively. Me'idna da'asid rashahu, v'atorah amra tashes yadcha im rasha, al tashes rasha. So Abaye says it's retroactive, because ultimately, again, from the time, now that they were made zomim, that means from the time that they gave testimony, they were a shaib. And the Torah says you cannot use a rasha for any testimonial or aid activity. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, they're retroactively invalid. Which also means, according to Abaye, anything that they have done testimony-wise, eidos-wise, in the interim is going to be undone. Rava Amar Mikana Lahabahu Nifsa. Rava says, no. The only time that an Eid Zomim becomes puzzle is from the moment that they are made Zomim and going forward. Why? The Gemara says, Eid Zomim Chidushu, because the whole concept of an Eid Zomim, right? They also say the whole idea of Eidim Zomim is a Chidushu. What's the Chidush? My chaz is the Samchis Ahani, Samach Ahani. So we'll say, because remember again, what happens to Eidim Zomim? A second set of witnesses is come along and say, Reuven and Shimon cannot have seen what they claim to have seen, why they are with us. Well, why should you give any more credibility to the second set than you do to the first set? Yet the Torah believes the second set. That's a tremendous Chiddush. The Chiddush only applies from the moment that it occurs and going forward. So therefore, again, to extend the Eid Zomim status retroactively would essentially be to amplify the Chiddush of Eidim Zomim, which we're not ready to do. So Abba says, therefore, fundamental machlokes between Abaye and Rav. And Abba says, so again, I just want to point out, we normally think of the concept of Eidim Zomim as everything happening in rapid succession, right? Reuven and Shimon show up in Beis Din, give testimony, and then, 10 minutes later, another set of witnesses, bust through the door saying, Reuven and Shimon, you were with us, you couldn't have seen it. But you could see there is this possibility that Reuven and Shimon give testimony, and then a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, a second set of witnesses show up and say, Reuven and Shimon, you could not have seen what you claim to have seen. You were with us at that time. So then Machlokes Abaye and Rava, do they become Eidim Zomim from the time of the testimony, or do they become Eidim Zomim ultimately retroactively? So that's the fundamental Machlokes. Amri, others say Rava Namika Abaye Israeli. Others say that Rava holds like Abaye. Rava holds like Abaye. How so? Umatam Kamar. So Matam Kamar Mikana Lahaba. Why is it ultimately again? Why is it that we only say that the witnesses are Eidim Zomim from now, from the time that Eidim Zomim going forward? Very simple. Because also here's the issue. The issue is you're going to put people at a disadvantage. Remember again, as we just said before, it is quite possible that the witnesses had engaged in much testimonial activity between the time that they gave their testimony and between the time that they were made into Eidim Zomim. And everyone was using them thinking that they were good witnesses. If you begin to now upend their testimonial activity retroactively, you're going to put many purchasers at a disadvantage. So my benai wasn't controversy between them. Two sets of witnesses testify about Reuven and Shimon, or they were disqualified ultimately again because of their theft. So Rapapi conducted himself like Rava, and therefore disqualified them only from this point going forward. Ravashi said that follows Abaye. That's the Mafreya. The Hilchasa Kavase Dabaye Biyalkigam. It was a famous Gemara. The halacha follows Abaye. Abaye in cases of Yal Kigam. We're not going to go through all of these cases, but you can see Rashi actually quotes all of them. And interestingly enough, halacha l'maisa, the ayin of Yal Kigam is Eid Zomim. Our case, we paskin like Abaye that halacha l'maisa, when an Eid Zomim is disqualified, he is retroactively disqualified back to the moment that he gave the testimony. Which means that if Reuven and Shimon gave their testimony on the 13th of Shvat, and they were disqualified, but they only became Eidim Zomim on the 13th of Adar, anything that they did between the time that they gave the testimony and were made Eidim Zomim is invalidated. So if they were used for transactions, they were used for documents, they were used for chasanas, everything is going to have to be done over again. Incredible. So once we pass like Abaye, Zomim disqualified the Mafreya. Incredible. Mumar, Ochal Level. So we'll see some other examples of people who are disqualified. So listen to this. Mumar Ochal Level Te'avon. So we'll say this is a person who eats non-kosher to Te'avon. Te'avon means because he likes it. Now, remember again, there are two ways to commit an Aveira. Number one way is the Te'avon, because I want to. Right, because it's enjoyable, because I like it, versus lahachis. Lahachis means I do something to rebel against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So essentially, this is what's called the pleasure aveira and the theological aveira. Pleasure aveira, we are intimately familiar with, right? I want to do it, I like it, it's enjoyable, it's fun, okay, so I'm just going to do it, right? Theological aveira, I'm taking a principled, there are principled sinners, right? Who go ahead and, right, that's what it is. Principled versus pleasure. There are pleasure sinners, principled sinners, right? So principled sinners, I'm taking a principled stance against God. I do not believe in this. So remember, Ochel Te'avon means a guy who eats non-kosher just because he likes it. just because he likes it. I enjoy it. It's pleasurable to me. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Divrei hakol pasal. Everyone agrees that such a person is pasal leidos. Such a person is not fit for testimony. Now, I will say, now, what's the idea over here? So interestingly enough, the Gemara says, why is a person eating non-kosher? Why is he eating non-kosher? So the Gemara says, probably because it's cheaper. Right? Probably because, right, anyone who ever sees these ads, right, for non-kosher, it's incredible. Right? Get 14 hamburgers for 50 cents. You know, whatever it is. It's like ridiculous, right? It's a half a mortgage to go out to eat, right, in a kosher place, right? So a person eats non-kosher food. Why is he doing it? So because it's cheaper. So we'll say, so what does that mean? That means I'm sinning for financial benefit. Okay, so remember again, what's the common theme over here? When you sin for financial benefit, you are pasal le'edus. You're pasal le'edus. That's it. So the Gemara says, now interestingly enough, lahachis. So this is so fascinatingly counterintuitive. So everyone agrees that a mumar le'te'avon, a person who eats non-kosher food because he likes it. The Gemara says it can't just be because of the taste, because kosher food is wonderful. It's because of the cost. It's because of the cost. So such a person is sinning in order to save money. Sinning because of money, you're automatically pasal le'edus, unfit for any testimony. What about lahachis? What about a principled sinner? Person who sins in order to rebel against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this is incredible. Abayi Amar Pasal. Abayi says such a person is Pasal. Rava Amar Kasher. Rava says he's Kasher. Rava says, right, isn't this fascinating? So now we would have thought just the opposite, right? That everyone would agree. Because we'll say why? Because remember, it's important to keep, what disqualifies you from testimony is when you're dishonest when it comes to money. That's what drives this. If you're dishonest when it comes to money, we can't trust you when it comes to transactions, because you may or may not be telling the truth, and you may or may not be signing on the truth. It's interesting. If I have other religious inconsistencies, that does not disqualify me from edus. That's why we saw the person who is even chashal hara. This person may be immoral. Okay, it might be immoral. That's an issue I have to work on. Right? But lamaisa, I can still be believed when it comes to financial matters. Even if I am a principled sinner, where I do things in order to rebel against God, again, not good, but it doesn't necessarily erode my financial integrity. So because of that, I could still potentially go ahead and give edus. So Abayi Amar Pasal, Abayi says you're Pasal, Rava Amar Kasher. So Abayi Amar Pasal, Abayi says Pasal, why the Havali Rasha? Rachmana Amar Al-Tashes Rasha Aid. So Abayi says, again, if you're a principled sinner, you're rebelling against God. If you're rebelling against God, you're Rasha. If you're Rasha, ultimately, again, you can't go ahead and be an aid. Rava says Kasher. Rasha the Chamas Ba'inan. Rava says you're Kasher. Why? Because the only type of Rasha that is unfit to give testimony is what kind of Rasha? A financial Rasha. And this guy's a principled Rasha, not a financial Rasha. Incredible. So may say the Gemara is a kasha. Al-Tashes Rasha aid. Torah says, do not go ahead and make a Rasha an aid. Al-Tashes Chamas aid. Who are these people? Elu Gazlanin. These are first the thieves. Umolin B'Shvius. People who go ahead and do business with Shemitah produce. So my love, Echad Shvuas Shav, Echad Shvuas Mammon. So when we're talking about, again, Molin B'Shvius, people who take oaths, who are unscrupulous with oaths. Who is that talking about? Is it not talking about someone who takes a false oath, or someone who takes false oaths regarding money? So we'll say, see from here, even non-financial discretions invalidate you from edus lo. Idi v'idi Shvuas Mammon. Umay Shvuas Shvuas Dalman. No, it means monetary oaths. So Meisvei Al-Tashes Rasha Aid, Al-Tashes Chamas Aid, Elu Gazlonen Umalavi Ribis. This refers to people ultimately, again, who are thieves and ultimately lend with interest. Tiyufta da Abaye tiyufta. And this seems to refute Abaye, because it seems to say the only thing that makes you unqualified to give eidos is financial indiscretion and not theological rebellion. Incredible. Maybe this whole thing is a machlokes tanoim. Suppose it was machlokes tanoim. Eid zomim pasal l'chal Torah kula de Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says if someone becomes an eid zomim, they are pasal to give eidos. They are pasal to give eidos in anything in the Torah. Rabbi Yosef, when is that so? Shehozam din nefashos. That's only if you are made an eid zomim when it comes to capital cases. Aval huzam b'dinei mamanis kashal dinei nefashos. This is interesting. If a person was made an eid zomim for monetary matters, they're still believed to testify for capital matters. Now, what's the logic behind that? The logic in Rabbi is, it's fascinating. When it comes to the world of sin, everyone has their line. right? Things that I would do and things that, I would never do this, right? I would never do this. So I will say, so interesting enough, apparently, well, not apparently, we know this, it occurs in the world of lying as well. A person might be willing to be a false witness when it comes to monetary matters, but that same person would never lie when it comes to capital matters. So even if a person is proven to be an Eid Zomein, when it comes to monetary matters, they would still be believed to testify when it comes to capital matters. So Nema Abai Krab Meir v'Rav Krab Yossi. So say that Abai holds like Krab Meir, and Rav holds like Rabbi Yossi. To which the Gemara says, Abai Krab Meir, I'm sorry, Abai Krab Meir, where's the Abai holds like Krab Meir? So the Amar Aminan Mikula L'Chumra. Because again, he holds ultimately again that we go ahead, if a person is willing to do a more lenient sin, they'd be willing to do a more chamrous sin as well. Rav da Amar Krab Yossi, da Amar Mechumra L'Kula Aminan, Mikula L'Chumra Lo Aminan. And Rav says like Krab Yossi, no, once a person has transgressed something severe, they're certainly willing to transgress something less severe. But if a person has only transgressed something less severe, they wouldn't necessarily be ready to transgress something more severe. To which the Gemara says, "Lo, Aliv Rabbi Yossi Kuli Amalo Pligi." According to Rabbi Yossi, no one disagrees. Keep Pligi to Rabbi Meir. Abaye Kirab Meir. Abaye holds like Rabbi Meir. Varava. Ad kam Rab Meir hasam ela gabe eid zomeim. So Rab Meir only espoused his position by eid zomeim. Why? The mamon. So the Gemara says eid zomeim the mamon, because when a person lies about monetary matters, derala shamayim verala brios. Such a person, I will say, ultimately again is committing a sin against the Kadosh Baruch Hu and a sin against people. Aval hacha, when it comes to a case, I will say, of ochel nevelos lahachis, that's a person who eats non-kosher as a principal sin, right? As a theological rebellion. Derala shamayim, such a person is committing a sin against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara says, ve'ein rala brios, but a person is not committing anything against their fellow man. Ultimately, again, lo, v'hilchasa kavasa da'abaye. I will say, but bottom line, the halacha follows Abaye. So therefore, I will say, what the Gemara seems to be saying over here, so there, the Gemara is saying, what do you mean, the halacha follows Abaye? The halacha says that even a principal sinner, right, what we call again, a mummer, lahachis, which is a person who does averos in a principled way to rebel against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is also pasal le'edus. So the Gemara says, 1 second, vayisosiv, right? So the Gemara says, but we just refuted Abaye, to which the Gemara says, the hahi Rabbi Yossi, that reflects of Rabbi Yossi. V'tihavina Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, alach Rabbi Yossi. So the Gemara says, but even Rabbi Yossi, what about the fact that Rabbi Yossi, alach Rabbi Yossi, shani hasam, distam lon tana Krab Meir. Even though normally alach Rabbi Yossi, in this case, the stam tana goes according to Rabbi Meir. The Gemara says, v'hacha sasam lon, where do we know that from? Kiha the barchama katal nafshe. So what's an interesting case that happened over here. We'll come back to the halacha l'maisa in just a moment. So I just want to point out what's happened over here. Interestingly enough, everyone is agreeing that a mumar l'te avon is pasal le'edus. Someone eats non-kosher because they like it. Such a person is absolutely unequivocally unfit for any testimonial capacity. Now, interestingly enough, why is that? What's the logic behind that? The Gemara understands this to be a financial crime. Right, that's what it is, right? Why is the person eating non-kosher? It's cheaper. So, what do you see? You're willing to sin to save money. Okay, well, once a person is willing to sin to save money, then by definition they're unfit for all edus, because that shows you're willing to live on the wrong side of the law for financial gain. Well, once that happens, then I'm not believed. Such a person is not believed for any matter regarding testimony. Interestingly enough, the machlokes Abaye and Rava is, what do you do about someone who is a mumar lahachis, a principal sinner? So this person is sinning not for financial gain, but to rebel against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's fascinating. So there's no financial piece over here, but there's a strong theological piece over here. So Abaye says, person is puzzle. Rava says, person is kosher. It seems to me we're tilting in the direction of Abaye, and let's finish this off. So the Gemara, listen to this. So now the Gemara wants to suggest we're going over here like Rabbi Meir. Stam Tanik Rabbi Meir. So listen to this story. It's a great story. I mean, it's not a great story, but it's an interesting story. Kiha the Barchama Katal Nafshe. This guy Barchama killed someone. Amalei Reish Galus, or at least he was accused of killing someone. Amalei Reish Galus, Abba Bar Yaakov, Puk Ayin Ba. So the Reish Galusa, right, the head of Babylonian Jewry, said to Rabbi Abba, go, you be the lead investigator on this. Investigate this, see what's going on. So if this guy Bar Chama killed someone, so we'll say literally it means poke out his eyes. Now Rashi points out over here, it doesn't mean poke out his eyes. The Reish Galusa did not have the power to put people to death or to do types of injury like this. Rather, what it means is punish him. Punish him, most probably financially. Most probably financially. So what happens? Also, Sahadi ashidube the vadei katal. So what happened? So two witnesses showed up and they said, "Listen, this guy Bar, what was his name? Bar Chama. This guy Bar Chama, he killed someone." So two witnesses show up in Beis Din to say Bar Chama killed someone. So I was listening to, okay, fine. So that seems to be the end of that. Azl ihu aisu trei sahadi asidu be bechad mehanach. So listen to this. So we'll say, listen to this. So what happened? So Bar Chama brought two other witnesses, and two witnesses testified against one of the accusing witnesses. Right. So again, it's just so right. Bar Chama is accused of killing someone. Rabbi Abba is leading up the investigation. He's convening the Beis Din. When they're in Beis Din, two witnesses show up and they testify against Bar Chama, saying Bar Chama killed, we'll call him Ruvain. Bar Chama killed Ruvain. Then what happens? Bar Chama brings two more witnesses. Those two witnesses testify against one of the accusing witnesses, discrediting him. And what do they say? The Gemara says, "Bechad mehana, chad amar kamai didi ganav kaba duchoshla, v'chad amar kamai didi ganav kata." Ganav kata amud beis will say katav diburtia. So again, so these two guys, so Bar Chama brings two other witnesses. These two witnesses show up and they say one of the accusing witnesses stole. Now they have a dispute about what he stole. One says he stole barley, the other says he stole the handle of an axe. Either way, the point is they're testifying that what? This guy, one of the accusing witnesses, is a ganav, and because he is a ganav, he is disqualified from testimony, from testifying, and because he's disqualified from testifying, therefore there are not two witnesses against Bar Chama. Okay, so let's analyze. So let's analyze this. So the Gemara says, "My day take Rabbi Meir." So ultimately, again, they hold like Rabbi Meir. For Rabbi Meir, the Gemara says, "Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi, halacha Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi ha'amar hozam bedine mamanis kash ledine nefashos." But 1 second. Normally, if there's a machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi, you follow Rabbi Yossi. Then what does Rabbi Yossi say? Just because someone is disqualified or made into an eid zomim by monetary matters, they are still believed for capital matters, right? What's Rabbi Yossi's logic? Just because you would lie about money doesn't mean you would lie about the capital case. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yossi, even if the witnesses are correct, that one of the accusing witnesses stole, that would still not disqualify him from being a witness against Bar Chama. But here we pass like Rabbi Meir. We'll say, what does Rabbi Meir say? Rabbi Meir says that even if you've been shown to be an eid zomim for dinei mamanis, that automatically disqualifies you for dinei nefashos as well. And we pass like Rabbi Meir. What do we say? We pass like Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara says, "Mimai ilei mehadistan kal rai ladan dinei nefashos rai ladan dinei mamanis." Anyone who is fit to be part, whether it means to adjudicate as a judge or to testify regarding dinei nefashos, is certainly believed for monetary matters. So money, if that's Rabbi Yossi, ha'ika eid zomim demalon. According to Rabbi Yossi, we'll say it's not necessarily the case because you do have a person who is made, once he's made into an eid zomim for monetary matters, the kashal dinei nefashos, upasla dinei mamanis, elalav Rabbi Meir. Rather you see it's Rabbi Meir. So mimai, Dilma bepsula yuchsin kai. Maybe not. Maybe he's talking about an aide who was disqualified because of a genealogical issue, not because of any other testimonial issue. Because if you don't say this, seifa diktani yesh rai ladon dinei mamanas saying rai ladon dinei nefashos. There is such a thing as a witness or as a judge who is fit for dinei mamanas but not fit for dinei nefashos. Amai ein rai. How could that be that he's not rai? It's some dinei nefashos. If he was made an aide zomim b'dinei nefashos, rai dinei mamanas. He still believed for monetary matters. Vaha divrei hakol pasalhu ella bepsul yuchsin kai. Rather, he must be talking about someone who is disqualified because of genealogical disqualification. Hachinami bepsul yuchsin kai ella hacha stam lantana disnan elu dinaps elu hinapsul. In other words, say we must be following Rabbi Meir because why would we learn in our Mishnah? Who are the people who are apostle for eidos? Hamasachi bekuvia. Gambler, Malavi Beribis, lending with interest, Mafricha Yonim, dove racers, Sochrei Shvius, people do business with Shemitah produce, Va'avadim, Zaklal, Kol Eidos She'ein Ha'isha Kshera La, any testimony or any testimony that a woman would not be believed for, Afhein Ein Kshera La, so too they are not believed for as well. Mani, whose opinion is this? Ilim Rabbi Yossi, if you want to say it's Rabbi Yossi, Ha'ika Eidos There's capital cases where a woman can't testify, but yet these individuals could. So the Gemara says, Elalav Rabbi Meir. So there must be Rabbi Meir. So therefore, I'll say, what do you see from here? It's Rabbi Meir. Now, I'll say, what does it mean for Rabbi Meir? Rabbi Meir paskins that halacha l'maisa, once someone has been disqualified for dinei mamonos, they also can't testify for dinei nefashos. This is Rabbi Meir's logic. Now, we'll say, why does Rabbi Meir hold? Say, just keep your eye on that shita. Rabbi Meir holds that once you are disqualified for dinei mamonos, you cannot testify for dinei nefashos. What's the logic there? What's the logic? Because once a liar, always a liar. Once you have lied regarding monetary matters, you have lost your credibility, and we don't put it past you that you would lie for capital matters as well. So the Rabbi will say, come, let's go for a circle. Here we go. Come, we're going to see. We'll say, by the way, I told you, we're going to make it. We're going to make it to the Mishnah. I just want to say, so now listen to this. So remember, what's happening over here? Come full circle. Bar Chama is accused of murder. Reish Galusa says to Rabbi Abba, go investigate. Rabbi Abba convenes a Beis Din. Witnesses show up. They say, we saw Bar Chama kill Ruvain. Good. I mean, not good. Right? Bar Chama killed Ruvain. Bar Chama then brings two other witnesses. What do those witnesses say? Those witnesses say that one of the accusing witnesses is not believed. Why? Why? He's a thief. We saw him steal. What did he steal? Barley and axe handle. Either way, it wasn't worth it, right? But Lamaisa, again, he stole. So I will say, now what's the shaila? What's the shaila? So now we've proven that one of the accusing witnesses is a thief. So what's the shaila? Do we paskin like Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi would say, just because you would lie with monetary matters does not mean that what? You would lie with capital matters, and therefore, again, the witness should still be believed. Rabbi Meir holds that no, once you have been established as a liar for monetary matters, you are no longer believed for any type of testimony, including capital matters as well. And I will say the whole Gemara just showed that what? We paskin like Rabbi Meir. Like Rabbi Meir, that halacha l'maisa, again, once proven a liar in monetary law, you've lost your credibility for everything. And therefore, I will say, what happens? Here we go. What happens? The Gemara says, I love Rabbi Meir. And therefore, what happened? Rabbi Abba threw out the case. He threw out the case from court. Right? Why? Because one of the witnesses was disqualified. Why was one of the witnesses disqualified? Because it was shown that he was a thief. And once it was shown that he was a thief regarding monetary matters, he lost his total testimonial credibility, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, the case was thrown out of court. What happened? Bar Chama nashke akare. Bar Chama kissed Rabbi Abba's feet. Right, kissed his feet. Right, Rashi says shipech b'schuso because he was very happy with the verdict. V'kable lekarge de kulei shane, and he promised to go ahead and get Rabbi Abba exempted from the head tax for that entire year. Right, he didn't have to pay taxes that year. Rashi says over here, v'kable lekarge de kulei shane latzilo kol yomav mimanas hamelach. And we'll say so. The Maharsha points out he doesn't get such a shkoyach for that. Generally, Talmidei Chachamim were exempt anyway from the head tax, so he wasn't really giving. But again, expressing his gratitude. Say for say halacha we'll stop waiting for today. But again, 2 points out halacha. Number one, we pass like Rabbi Meir that again, once someone is shown to be a liar, they lose their credibility for monetary matters. We extend that to all cases, including capital matters as well. And Abba say again, just to circle back, close out the circuit on Abaye. How do we paskin? Everyone agrees that a mumar lete avon, someone who goes in and eats non-kosher again for their own pleasure, is certainly disqualified because that's a monetary infraction. But what about a mumar lahachis? The Rambam paskins like Abaye and a mumar lahachis, a principled sinner, someone who sins to rebel against the Kodesh Baruch Hu, is also going to be disqualified from any kind of edus. As well, so stop over here for today. Shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone.
It's a big tzorach that paying his tax, argument-based tax, isn't a shochad, a mafreya. It's like giving the judge something after the case is done.
I don't know if there is a din of, is there a din of shochad?